No one could have imagined that river monsters would become one of Animal Planet's biggest hits when it initially came on TV. Jeremy Wade immediately became a world-famous figure. He traveled the world to find scary legends and creatures that appeared like they came right out of nightmares. But after 9 seasons at the top, the show suddenly stopped, leaving fans confused. Was it a drop in ratings? Tired of being creative? Perhaps something much worse going on behind the scenes. Wade, who is now 69, has now spoken up, and his story gives a totally different reason for why River Monsters ended. On March 23, 1956, Jeremy Wade was born in Ipswich, England. He and his family relocated to the community of Nayland when he was young, and he went to Dean Close School there. His father was a vicar, but not much is known about his mother. Wade first fell in love with fishing near the banks of the River Stour in Suffolk, East Anglia. As a kid, he would spend hours by the lake, just like other people are drawn to the mountains. When he was 7 or 8, he tried fishing for the first time, but it was clumsy and he didn't catch anything. But once a school friend showed him the ropes and he caught his first fish, he was hooked. His parents pushed him to be independent by letting him spend whole days outside looking for new fishing sites, which would mold his lifelong love of adventure. Wade went to Bristol University to study zoology after high school. Later, he got a postgraduate teaching certificate in biological sciences from the University of Kent. In his early 20s, he got his first steady work as a teacher, but he didn't like it. Where he was going in the future. He relocated to London for a year and worked as a motorcycle messenger. He started traveling in his mid-20s. A vacation to India changed everything. He sold a few fishing articles to publications while he was out exploring the rivers there. The salary wasn't much, just a few pounds, but it made him think that he could make a living doing what he loved. Wade lived for a while without a clear long-term plan. He simply worked long enough to pay for his next trip. The only time he stayed in one job for more than 3.5 years was at an advertising firm. That was the longest he had ever been in one job till later in life. But adventure kept calling. He headed out on his first international fishing trip in 1982 with only 200 pounds in his pocket. He flew on an Ariana Afghan DC-10 to India. There, he caught his first Himalayan mazir, a robust freshwater fish, and his urge to keep exploring grew even stronger. There were both discoveries and dangers in the years that followed. He lived cheaply and saved what little money he could for each new trip. He went to locations like Nepal, Thailand, South America, China, and the Congo. He had to deal with malaria on the Congo River and political suspicion while fishing in the Mekong during the turbulent years of the Cold War. But he never gave up on his path. Wade used all of his savings to self-publish a fishing book in 1992. It cost a lot of money. He went broke after selling 2,000 copies that didn't sell, and it took him years to get back on his feet by selling books one by one to bookstores. He wouldn't give up, though. He would eventually get into TV because he loved fishing and sharing stories. There was a turning moment when a producer saw a picture in the newspaper of Wade holding a huge fish from the Amazon. That picture inspired him to make his debut documentary, Jungle Hooks, which took him back to the Amazon basin. He caught a 200-pound arapaima there, which was one of the scariest things that ever happened to him. While they were filming, the single-engine plane that Wade and his team were on lost power as it was coming down. The tops of the rainforest trees got closer and closer until the plane hit a rubber tree and crashed in a swamp. It was a miracle that all 5 passengers lived and were not hurt. Wade was scared to fly after that, but he had to do it for work. Jungle Hooks gave me additional chances. A few years later, Wade got to make a short series called Killer Catfish. This project sent him to India's Kali River to look into a series of strange drownings. People in the area thought about whirlpools or crocodiles, but Wade went after the gunch catfish instead. People said that this huge animal, which could grow bigger than a person, had developed a liking for human remains from funeral pyres along the riverbanks. Wade set up a fire on the water's edge to attract the fish, and it didn't take long for them to show up. After a lot of hard work, including swimming with one hand across perilous currents while holding onto his fishing pole, he eventually caught it. The fish was thrown back into the river, but the story made for great TV. Many people think that Wade's favorite episode was the one that included mystery, danger, and victory. Animal Planet noticed how well it did, which led to River Monsters, the show that would make Jeremy Wade one of the most famous people in adventure TV. River Monsters first aired on April 5, 2009, and it immediately became the show most closely associated with Jeremy Wade. At first, the concept of seeing someone travel the world to fish might not sound like edge-of-your-seat entertainment, but the show was never simply about fishing. Wade made it a mix of a mystery, an adventure, and a science lesson. Each episode was like a detective narrative, with whispers, eyewitness testimonies, and local folklore leading up to the big reveal of a real-life water creature at the finale. That formula drew in people who weren't even fishermen. Wade saw himself not just as a fisherman, but also as an environmentalist and teacher at the same time. He often said that the series was a chance to show off the animals that live in lakes and rivers, many of which people had never heard of. His purpose was simple but strong. People might start to care about the environments these animals live in if they learned more about them. He was dedicated even when the cameras weren't on. He collaborated with experts in South Africa and the Bahamas, tagging bull sharks and tiger sharks for research and helping to acquire DNA samples from fish that are in risk of extinction. River Monsters was never just about catching enormous fish, it was also about safeguarding them and relaying their story. Season 1 set the tone right away by taking Wade from the Amazon to Spain, India, Texas, and other places. Each trip brought not only the chance to see amazing animals, but also the excitement of finding new things. In one of the first episodes, he found the alligator gar, a fish that seems like it came from the past and is known for biting people. The story came from a report in 1932 that a gar attacked a girl. Wade's search took him to Texas, where he fought a 123-pound gar to the shore. He got hurt in the fight, which was a reminder that these so-called creatures were just as scary as their stories said they were. But Episode 6, Amazon Flesh Eaters, was the scariest part of the season. Wade went after the kangaroo asu, which is one of the most disturbing fish in the world. The kangaroo asu was bigger, more aggressive, and much more upsetting than its smaller, more famous relative, which is known for being dangerous to swimmers. It was only a few inches long, but it could grab onto other fish or, in rare circumstances, people and use its razor-sharp teeth to make circular cuts. Wade thought the kangaroo asu was one of the most disgusting animals he had ever dealt with. Even though he had to cope with piranhas and sawfish that appeared like living weapons, this little catfish was the most scary thing for him. It was the kind of thing that might make even a seasoned adventurer shiver. It was slimy, wriggled, and had small glowing eyes. When Wade worked with Dr. Lucia Rapp at the National Institute of Amazonian Research, the inquiry took a turn for the worse. She told anecdotes about medical examiners who had confused kangaroo asu attacks with gunshot wounds when looking at jars of preserved material. In one example, bodies that were supposed to be victims of violence were found with their organs and blood missing, and little fish were stuffed within the holes. These so-called bullet holes were actually the places where these persistent scavengers got in. In Season 2 of River Monsters, Jeremy Wade traveled throughout the world, to Thailand, Africa, India, and the United States, seeking fish that most people only read about in stories. There were a lot of amazing things that happened that season, but one story jumps out. The quest began with the episode Demon Fish, which took Wade back to the Congo River. He said that the trip there was long, tiring, and risky, and that the real life behind the camera was not as glamorous as it looked. Television edits make it look like the excitement never stops, but a lot of the trip was spent waiting, dealing with problems, and facing actual dangers on the ground. It took a whole week to get the permissions and find a boat that worked. It would have taken another week of red tape to cross to the other side of the river. Something they didn't have time to do. But the locals were the ones that really caused the stress. When Wade and his team got there, a villager who was fishing went missing. That man was the chief's brother. The villagers quickly connected the disappearance with the arrival of strangers. Some people thought the chief was to blame, while others were sure that the foreign crew was involved. What Wade didn't know. It wasn't until much later that I found out that some villagers were even getting ready to attack the squad with rocks to deal with the accused criminals. Wade kept going even though it was dangerous, and he finally came face to face with the Goliath tigerfish, the fish he had been chasing for decades. This huge predator from the Congo Basin is known for its fangs that are as sharp as knives. That look a lot like a shark's. Wade had been looking for one for 6 years and had made 3 journeys to the area. This time, he finally got one. He had been trying to catch a 78-pound tigerfish for about 25 years. The fish lay across his chest, and there was no doubt about how big and dangerous it was. Sadly, Wade normally lets his captures go, but this one didn't get it back to the water, bringing a melancholy finish to his long search. The next season had the same sense of adventure. Wade went to New Zealand, Argentina, Papua New Guinea, Japan, and the Solomon Islands to continue his search for the secrets of uncommon freshwater animals. But one capture in Season 3, down in the isolated rivers of Australia, was unlike anything he had ever showed before. Wade met the large-toothed sawfish in an episode called Chainsaw Predator. This animal was so bizarre that it looked like it had been made by an engineer instead of nature. Its nose looked just like a chainsaw blade and was about 7 feet long. It had 39 sharp teeth on its rostrum. It looked like a shark, but it was actually a kind of ray. Its saw-like snout wasn't a weapon against people, it was a tool for cutting through schools of fish, mollusks, and crustaceans. The rostrum of the sawfish had electrosensory organs that let it pick up on even the weakest signals from prey that was hiding in the murky water. Even though it looked scary, the biggest toothed sawfish was not dangerous to people. Sadly, it is currently on the list of endangered species. It can still be found in several tropical and freshwater areas of the world, nevertheless. The one Wade pulled out of the dark Australian river, with only his flashlight lighting up its body, was both unearthly and beautiful. At first glance, it may have looked like the River Monsters crew had an easy job. The crew's major concerns seemed to be travel, food, shelter, and filming, since most episodes showed Jeremy Wade patiently casting lines, baiting hooks, and waiting for something to bite. But the truth behind the scenes was far harder. The show took a lot of time and money, but it also put a lot of stress on the crew's health, sanity, and even their safety. It usually took around 3 weeks to make each episode, but only 3 or 4 of those days were spent fishing. The rest was taken up by the many problems that come with operating in harsh conditions. During a production in Peru, looking for Humboldt squid, director Kelly Nevis once talked about how the team ran into a lot of challenges that were common for river monsters. The boat was too small, the crew and their guides had trouble communicating, people often became seasick, there weren't enough safety measures in place, and there was even the fear of pirates. The crew had to get a naval escort to protect them since the threat was so real. Under these circumstances, it's hardly surprising that the cast and crew didn't come out of the show undamaged. Injuries and sickness were common, and close calls were just part of the work. Jeremy Wade has said that some of the most dangerous things that happened to him had nothing to do with the fish. When he touched an electric eel, he didn't get hurt. But he wasn't as lucky with other animals. He thought an arapaima that weighed 80 pounds hit him right in the chest. He was in pain for weeks after the accident, and he was afraid it might have hurt his heart. In Argentina, another horrible event happened when the poisonous spine of a catfish penetrated the back of his hand. The injuries lasted long after the cameras stopped rolling. There were enough incidents over the years that Animal Planet started making a multi-part YouTube series on the most severe ones. One video was about a ruptured tendon from a stingray encounter. Wade and his team regularly traveled without a paramedic, even though it was dangerous. It wasn't doable because of space and logistics. Most of the crew, on the other hand, got medical training and carried small trauma packs containing dressings, airway tubes, EpiPens, and other emergency supplies. These preparations were very important because they filmed in the middle of the bush. They used a satellite phone to stay in touch with the production firm when they could get a signal. The production team took these risks seriously, but they had to do what TV wanted them to do. Wade once said that the first thing they always asked when they phoned in an emergency was if everyone was okay. The second question came right after the first. Did someone record it on video? It showed what River Monsters is all about, thrilling encounters with gigantic freshwater monsters and the constant danger that things could go horribly wrong. But not every exciting moment was caught on tape. Wade got one of his worst injuries while filming Bull Shark, but no one wrote it down. He was in a lot of pain since his hand had been crushed in a car door. The videographer dropped the camera completely because he was shaken by the sight of genuine blood and thought Wade needed medical help right away. The crew decided to use pre-roll functions on their cameras after this happened. This way, they would always be able to film a few seconds before they hit record. But there were other threats to river monsters besides physical peril. There was also criticism. In 2013, Kyle Hill, a science journalist and YouTuber, sent an open letter to the people who made river monsters in Scientific American. His major worry was that the show's dramatic manner, which included phrases like K******, man-eater, assassins, and flesh-eaters, along with reenactments of monster attacks, made the fish look bad. Hill was worried that people may regard these animals as deadly dangers instead of amazing pieces of nature. This could cause people to be scared for no reason or perhaps hurt the animals themselves. He said that his criticism sounded extreme, but he still believed that if entertainment concentrated too much on demonizing animals to get ratings, we could end up being the actual monsters. He did say, though, that Jeremy Wade seemed to really care about the fish's well-being. Wade talked about it in Discover magazine, saying that the show did play up sensationalism but that it was a conscious choice. He said the idea was to get a lot of different people to watch, not to scare them. He didn't like the idea of scaring people. Instead, framing the series as a method to face concerns head-on. Wade never wanted to make these creatures look bad, he only wanted to understand them. And most people would prefer not learn how to live with animals through that understanding. And while those arguments were going on, River Monsters was slowly becoming a worldwide hit. You see, when River Monsters first came on TV, no one could have guessed how big it would get. Jeremy Wade already had years of research and stories to work with, but with 9 seasons, the crew had to keep adding to the roster of strange species. Over time, the show went to places that were famous, such Loch Ness and even the toxic pools around Chernobyl. The ending was what made the show different. Instead of letting things run on until ratings dropped, his crew chose to leave when the show was still at its pinnacle. The plan was for Wade to have already caught almost all of the fish on his original list, so there wasn't much that seemed new. It was clear that the show was going in a different direction by the later seasons. For instance, Season 8 was all about life in the ocean. It's an interesting twist, but it's a big change for a show about rivers. Before that, people have seen Wade fish in areas as far away as the Scottish Highlands and the Erie waters near Chernobyl, where he famously caught a radioactive catfish. Even while these stories were exciting, it was evident that the original framework had passed its course. Wade said in an online Q&A not long before that ocean season aired that he had made a list of fish he intended to catch when the show initially started. At that point, most of the names on that list had already been marked off. It seemed like a logical end. He said that the subject matter was limited and that he had done what had once appeared impossible. River Monsters ended in 2017. Leaving behind one of the best runs in Animal Planet history. The end of the show didn't mark the end of the fun. Wade's life was never only about fishing, traveling, and discovering new things. He has been back on TV with new shows after River Monsters, such as Mighty Rivers, Dark Waters, and Mysteries of the Deep. Each of these shows maintained the spirit of adventure alive, bringing him to faraway, strange waters that not many people would like to go there. Wade has always been very dedicated to conservation, even when he was on TV. He has talked a lot about how important it is to maintain freshwater ecosystems and how many species are ignored since they aren't as colorful as marine life. But he says that rivers and lakes are home to some of the most interesting fish in the world, even though they don't get much attention. People have also been interested in Wade's relationship with his catches. He says that he eats smaller fish sometimes, especially when he travels to places where fresh food is hard to find. Some choices have been practical, like eating piranha even if they aren't very good. Others have been more lenient. The tambaqui is one of his favorites. A close relative of the pacu that is recognized for its strange horse-like teeth that it uses to split nuts. Wade has said that the meat is very tasty because it eats a lot of natural foods. Jeremy Wade has never slowed down, even with River Monsters behind him. His desire to learn, respect for environment, and curiosity keep him going, showing that his adventures didn't cease when the cameras stopped filming. They just changed into new stories that needed to be told.